Chapter 17. Harry Bender, the world's greatest shoe salesman, bent over the vast shoe display at the downtown Dallas Gladstones, which was, without question, the biggest shoe store I had ever seen. It had 3 floors, men's, women's, and children's, and a huge white spiral staircase that wrapped around the largest plastic foot in the universe, with toes that started by the Johnston and Murray display, and a leg that reached to the sky past the women's square-toed flats. Everything is bigger in Texas. Harry's about my size. He was wearing hand-stitched Tony Lama snakeskin cowboy boots and a very large Stetson hat. His starched white shirt was open at the neck, no tie. He had the kind of a face you could picture laying in the sewer someplace after getting beat up. Now this one here, he held up a leather walker to the man he was waiting on. This one's got everything you need. Good traction, hugs the road. Sounds like a tire, the man said, amused. Better than a tire. This old shoe'll take you places a tire only dreamed of. 11D, the man said, smiling. Harry Bender tipped his hat to me and Mrs. Gladstone and hustled into the back and came out moments later with a box. See? Harry was saying, putting the shoe on the man, lacing it up. Most folks don't treat their feet right. They just take shoes for granted. I tell you, shoes can turn a life around. 23 years ago, I was drunk and out of work and so broke, I was wearing bedroom slippers. But a priest took pity on me and got me a pair of soft leather tie-ons. I figured then and there that God was telling me to straighten up and sell shoes or join the priesthood. I see the shoes won, the man said, chuckling. Well, the Lord knew I'd given my wife enough guff. The priesthood would have blown her court clear to Amarillo. The man was laughing, standing up in the bases. They feel good, he said, wiggling his toes. Yeah, those'll do you a good turn. You want to wear 'em or carry 'em? I'll keep them on. Mr. Rodriguez, Harry Bender bellowed happily at a mustached man behind the counter. Get this fine gentleman checked out so he can go back to celebrating the good life God gave him. Everyone in the store was grinning. Some people just naturally make you glad to be alive. Harry Bender raced up to Mrs. Gladstone and grabbed her 2 bony hands in his big, hairy ones. Blast, Maddie, it's good to see you. Mrs. Gladstone looked at him beaming. You making me rich, Harry. He patted her hands. Every day, old girl. Harry Bender grinned at me. He had the most genuine smile I'd ever seen. Not a scrap of fakeness in it. You must be Jenna. He put his hand out to me. Welcome to Texas. We ate lunch with Harry Bender, and he was putting away as much Texas barbecue as a human being could and still be conscious. Brisket, pinto beans, sausage, Texas toast. He was wearing a lapel pin. Live each day as though it's your last. But I didn't think it was referring to food consumption. The restaurant had long tables covered with paper, and the man carving the brisket shouted, Senor Bender, when we walked in and sliced us the best pieces of meat, using that knife of his like a sculptor. It was the best barbecue I'd ever tasted, which reminded me of the B- I got last year on a history paper that should have been an A- easy. The topic was, what are the things America will be remembered for? I wrote baseball, jazz, barbecue, and the Constitution. Mr. Hellritter wrote limited across the top of my essay in red pen, which I guessed I should have expected, him being a vegetarian. Opal is a vegetarian except when barbecue is around. She says barbecue is a food group unto itself. That's one of the things I like about her. She doesn't fight it when the lines blur. Harry Bender and Mrs. Gladstone had moved from talking about Eldon to talking about the good old days. This man, Mrs. Gladstone was laughing, came to our Dallas store 23 years ago, insisting we hire him even though he had no experience. You were the biggest thing in town, Maddie. I figured, why waste my talent in some joint? What were you going to do before, sir? I was a ranch hand in Fort Worth, went from place to place pretty much. I could see him wrestling cows to the ground. Yeah, I stormed right in, told Floyd it was his lucky day. God had sent me. He hired me on the spot. Haven't had a drink since. I smiled. You make it sound easy. Staying sober is the hardest thing I do. Sometimes I'm with someone who's drinking and feeling happy, and I start thinking I can handle it now. I can have one. Then I remember what a fat lie that is. I can't handle a drop. Mr. Bender's cell phone started ringing. He flipped it open. "You got Harry," he said into the receiver. He listened, covered the phone with his hand. "One of the fellows I sponsor in AA," he whispered to me and Mrs. Gladstone. "He's new at being sober, gets the jitters sometimes." Mrs. Gladstone patted my hand and excused herself to go to the bathroom. Harry Bender rammed his toothpick on the table. "No, no, no," he said into the phone. "You know if you take a drink, you're not going to be able to stop." He listened some more. "I know how hard it is, but you can't get near that stuff. It's poison in your life, and the Lord couldn't have made that more clear if he'd hung you by your toes over a manure pile. You listen to me, old boy, and throw it out now. I know it. I know it. All right, call back if you need to." Harry closed his phone, stuck it back on his belt. "That's great you sponsor people, Mr. Bender. That's what it's about. Had some fine men help me years ago, just trying to return the favor." I took a deep breath. "Boy, I wish you could talk to my father. He hits the sauce." "Yeah," I said quietly. "Your dad at a point where he wants to talk?" "No." He sniffed. "You getting help for yourself?" I told him about Al-Anon and the way we talked about things in my family. "Best thing you can do for your dad is love him and pray for him, and don't let him step on you or let his disease infect you any more than it has." "I try." "So many hurting people," Harry Bender said, looking out the window. "I'll tell you what, though, if you set your mind and heart toward a healthy way of living and thinking, you'll find a way to climb out of the biggest pit life throws your way." He flipped his Stetson back on his head and smiled. "I didn't say what I was thinking. How I wished he was my father."